Tell me about the trendsetter.
I don't say exploded. Explodes means that it's
right.
That it's gone, right?
And then it
goes
dissipates.
boom and it dissipates.
Yeah. You guys heard it here. Dr. Cruz said it. Go scream at your boss today. Take that risk.
Be observant of other people who are in leadership roles. And mentally, you have to be nimble, but also very focused. And sometimes you don't even realize when it's happening.
What led you to step out of higher education for a little bit, and then what ultimately was the trigger point to come back?
Right, because it's all about relationships at the end.
Welcome to another episode of the Transform Podcast. If you're looking for a place where you're gonna learn actionable tips on how to transform your health, wealth, and relationships, you've come to the right place. Please subscribe. Super excited to be here today with Dr. Anthony Cruz, a friend now, and this is an incredible community leader. He's actually the campus president at the Miami-Dade College Kendall campus, and he's also the trendsetter. My friend, thank you so much for being here. Alex. Super appreciative of the opportunity to have a chat with you and then just get to know more about you.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Awesome.
It's exciting, man.
Yeah.
It's great.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about you. Maybe give me a minute or two of Dr. Anthony Cruz and what you stand for.
Well, I think it's important to kind of describe a journey, right? Mm-hmm. A little bit also of who you are is really part of your journey. And born in Chicago, moved here to Miami when I was 9 years old. Grew up in Miami, went to high school in Miami, went to college, went to FIU, and went away to get my master's degree at FSU. And started working at FIU as my first job in higher education now 31 years ago.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and have gone through a long journey. Now I find myself here as a campus president at the Kendall campus. And so a lot of learning has gone on throughout those years. I took a little bit of a hiatus along the way. Early on in my career, went into the financial services realm, was a stockbroker and financial advisor for 3 years, but then came back to higher education. And my biggest passion is engaging people, not only here on campus, but also in the community. I think that's a really important thing.
And I've witnessed that, by the way.
Yeah, and because as an educational institution, we're part of the community, right?
Yes.
I mean, we serve the community. The students come here to better themselves. But in addition to that, it's important to make those connections, right?
Yeah,
like I've made with you, I've made with others in the community, to make sure that people know about the great things that are happening here at the college and how we can be helpful as well, right? Because it's really about collaborating and making things better so everybody really is successful.
Absolutely, absolutely. So tell me, what led you to step out of higher education for a little bit, and then what ultimately was the trigger point to come back? I want to hear that story.
Well, great question. So I actually had been in higher ed about 6 or 7 years and really enjoying what I was doing, but I found an opportunity to work in the financial services industry. And really I thought, well, this could provide a better life for my family, a financial life, right? Because I was doing well in higher education, but higher education doesn't pay as well as other industries.
Right.
So I said, I'm going to go ahead and try that. And went through the series of tests that it'd take, the Series 7 and others, to become a stockbroker, and then started working in the financial service industry. And I actually liked it. I liked working with the clients. I liked advising the clients and all that kind of thing. It was always a great thing. 9/11 rolled around, unfortunately, right? Yeah. And not only did it have a tremendous impact on our country, but also on the economy and the financial services industry. I mean, the stock market was closed for like a week after that happened. And really, that whole turmoil kind of, and when I saw people lose a great deal of money and the frustration people had, I said to myself, you know what? Got to take a break from this, and I want to go back to higher education. And was able to do that. I had made some great connections when I was in higher education before, and was able to get back into higher education, and really have been there ever since then. So it's just one of those things that happens in life. I think but I learned a lot.
I
learned a lot from it. I learned a lot about my own finances. I've been able to use that throughout the years. But more importantly is relationship building. With the relationship building that I had with my clients. And learned a lot about people's backgrounds, how they made money, how they continue to make money, and but also how to really interact with individual high net worth clients. And so I think that was a very strong base and foundation to things that I learned that I've been able to apply and even in higher education, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
it's all about relationships at the end of the day.
Very translatable skill set that you got from. I could see that. I could definitely see that because being part of the industry, that's relationships are everything, but also the piece of advice, guidance, and education, and just connecting with people, building rapport on the spot. Critical skills that you learn on the industry. So tell me about the passion. Where did the passion for education as a whole, where did that start?
Well, it's interesting because when I graduated with my master's degree from Florida State, I was looking for a job. And at that time, I was in Tallahassee, right? And I was looking, back then, we didn't have, it wasn't job boards or whatever, we're not online. It was basically, I was looking every week. They would actually physically post, jobs in the state university system in Florida. And I saw a job come up at FIU as a recruiter. I said, well, you know what? I went to school at FIU, understood the community. It was a great thing to come back as a recruiter for FIU. Started working there. So it wasn't really about necessarily at that point about passion. At that point, it was about getting a job, right? I had graduated and I was trying to get my master's in public administration. I really wanted to be like a city manager, county manager. That was my aspiration.
Interesting.
But I had met a lot of roadblocks. This is early 90s. There was a recession, not a lot of job openings. And so I got forced to kind of look, okay, maybe I can't get this now. Look at something else. And I said, well, I know about it. I know what it is to be a student. I really loved, going to FIU. I think I can do this job. And so I applied and got the position. And so it wasn't really planned out, right? It just happened. But what I learned while when I was starting that position is like, I really loved being around students. And I loved the fact that it's not just like one set of students, right? But it's a continuous flow of students coming in and graduating, and then another group and another group. And I really got a passion for higher education, knowing that I could impact students' lives and at the same time, build the community. I mean, there's a lot going on there. And again, during that time in that position, it was an entry-level position, but I got that
the
fever,
itch.
the fever, for being in higher education. And then I started, because I already had my master's, a couple of jobs later, I also started teaching political science and public administration courses at FIU. So that also obviously enhanced my feeling about higher education and the power of higher education. And I felt it myself in the sense that the same thing I was doing with these students is something that I felt as a student myself. I'm a first generation college student. So the transformative power of higher education in my own life, I already had felt back then. Now I feel it even 20 times, right? Based on where I am today. But even then, I knew the feeling of being somebody whose family had never been to college, didn't know much about how to go to college, what to expect from college, and that I could be providing that type of guidance to students and helping them in that journey. So that really fueled the passion of saying, I can really make a difference here. I didn't think about higher education as my ideal job or my career route, right? But being exposed to that very early on really drove me to say, this is something that I want to continue. So I did, and like I said, got a little interruption with the financial, when I went to the financial services industry. But then I came back, and then finally in my late 30s, I said, you know what? I need to do something more with my education in order to go to the highest level. And so that's when I started doing my doctoral work, and then did my doctorate. And so that opened even more opportunities, right? Because in higher education, you get to a certain point, and if you don't have that doctorate, you can't go any higher. And so I knew I had to do it. So in my late 30s, started working on that. By my early 40s, had a doctorate. And then that enabled me to get other positions. I got a dean's job, and then a vice president, and a vice chancellor, and then where I am today. So again, higher education opens doors. In higher education, you have to have at the highest level in order to get to the highest level. So that's something that I knew that had to happen. So it's about planning, looking towards the future. Didn't know that I would eventually become a campus president. That was not something that was really a goal at that point. But I knew that in order to get to the higher levels, I would have to have a doctoral degree.
That's an incredible story, by the way, of the challenges, you looking back and reflecting on your own upbringing and how education led you to reach these levels in your career and in your personal life. So that's incredible. You gave me a lot of meat there, so I want to dissect it a little bit. I want to start with the challenges, because you mentioned two humongous challenges, right? Financial crisis in the 90s, financial crisis in the 2000s. So how did that play a part in your development, in your career? And obviously you mentioned some of that. And how did that shape you as a person?
Well, I think that anytime that you face any type of adversity, I think it gives you a chance to learn.
Yes.
Right? It gives you a chance to learn from what's happening at that time. And sometimes you don't even realize when it's happening. Right? You're being shaped. Back, You're being shaped and you don't even know or how, but it is happening. It also makes you feel, I think that one thing I take away from that is that you have to be very nimble in your career, right? And you have to be very nimble with what you can do. And we work, most of us work because we have to, right?
Yeah.
We do things because we need an income. We need to provide for our families. And back then when that happened, I had a very young family. So you provide for your family, but along the way, obviously, and hopefully you find also the passion, for what you're doing. And then that allows you to keep going. Like for me, coming in this morning, to work every day is a wonderful day.
Yes,
because I know that it is going to be it's something I'm going to have a great impact somehow, or somebody's going to have a great impact on me. I mean, we're having this conversation right now. You're having an impact on me. So that's a great thing, but you have to be nimble. That's what those two crises kind of taught me, is that mentally you have to be nimble, but also very focused in what you're doing, right? And you have to plan. And I've always been a planner. So not that the plans will dictate everything, but at least you have to have a roadmap. And that roadmap may change, right? It has changed in my life. Those crises have kind of, you throw in a curveball, you got to change. You have to go with that. You got to go with that change in order to adapt to those things. But you have to have a plan, And I'm not into like a backup plan and all this. No, but at least one plan. One plan, you have a goal. What's your plan to get there? And then as time goes on, you may have to adapt and change accordingly. So that's what you have to be very, flexibility is a very
adaptable,
very important piece of this. So I think those are a couple of things that I think I learned from that, right?
Great nuggets.
Is to have that flexibility and to be nimble enough to change careers. But the interesting thing about this, Alex, is I changed industries, but that I really changed careers. I don't know if I did.
No, you actually didn't.
Right?
You were still working with people.
Exactly.
And helping people out.
Right. So your vocation sometimes, your occupation may change, but not your vocation. Right. So your vocation is very important as to what's your passion about. What are you focusing on? You're focusing on people, on helping people, on relationship building, on engaging others. So I think that's what I've been doing. And a friend of mine that's been in sales for many, many years, his whole career, he says, well, you wouldn't understand it. You're not in sales. That's what he said. Because
I know who that is, I think. Ellie, right?
Yeah. So I said, you know what? But it is about sales. Like what I do on a daily basis is really, I'm selling education. In a good way. It's like a good way is like selling education and a dream. And that's what we do in higher education. And you have to be able to articulate that. You have to be able to build the relationships with people, have people trust you. All the things that happen in sales, just like that have to happen in sales, is happening in higher education as well. And especially on my end, I'm not the one, even though I have been teaching in the class, I taught in the classroom for so many years, it's not about the teaching aspect, but it's just about the higher education business, right? What do we do in higher education, and what's our goal? And our goal really is to go out there and educate as many people as possible and make them the best person they can be, so they can do the best they can for their families and their lives.
Very much needed, by the way. I'm a product of higher education also. I came to Miami College.
Yeah, you see.
I'm a student. I'm student of here. I also went to FIU, so I could advocate for the impact that higher education could have in your life.
Yes, definitely.
I think you already answered this, but I want to make a segment specifically on this.
Yeah.
Is it more important to follow your passion? Or does your passion come along once you get better at whatever you're doing?
Well, I think for me, I didn't really, like I said, didn't start with that passion. And sometimes you have to find it.
Yeah.
Right? I think and maybe it's along the way that you find it and you fine tune it and it gets bigger and bigger. Because for me, personally, this passion has grown.
Yeah.
It's not something that was, I told you, it was zero or not even existent because I didn't know about it, in the beginning, to where it is now. it's 20-fold. It's grown to epic proportions, my passion. And it's stronger today than ever.
Amazing.
But I think that now also I know that I can have a greater impact as well.
Yeah.
And, as I've gone up the ladder, I've been able to, and thank God, been able to assume more responsibilities and have, more ability to have impact. And then because of that, the passion grows even greater, right? Because you know that you can make even a bigger difference. I mean, when I was an academic advisor, working with students, I was like having an impact because I was working with 200, 300 students and working with them on a daily basis to make them achieve their dreams, right? But now,
the scale,
thousands, right? Here we serve 30,000 students a year on this campus. I don't touch all 30,000, but a lot of the things that we do and we implement, because I have the ability to do that, have that impact on those 30,000. Maybe not all of them, but the vast majority of them. And that's where the passion has just, I don't want to say exploded, because explodes means that it's
right.
that it's gone, right?
And then it
goes
dissipates.
Boom and it dissipates. No, there's no explosion. It's the growth, right? It keeps on building and building and building because of the things that I see, and I see the impact. And the thing then, on top of it, I'm a leader here, but then we have so many great leaders. I have a great team that helps me. When I have an idea, how do we implement the idea? They come up with great ideas as well, and we work very closely together to make sure that we have this impact. So it's not a solo, it's not me.
Yeah, of course not.
It's not me doing it. I never want to anybody think that it's just about me. Maybe I'm the face of it. Maybe people see me more than others.
But it takes a village.
It takes a village, takes dedicated, strong, smart people along with you to really make that happen. And I couldn't do the things that I do today without the help and everything that the team does.
Perfect segue. What are some of the skills you would recommend to a young student or a young professional to become a better leader in the future?
I think it's whether you have a mentor or not. And sometimes, it's great to have a mentor. And unfortunately, I haven't had as many mentors as I think I should have had in my career. And that's something that I do now as much as I can for others. So at any given time, I probably have 3 or 4 individuals that I call my mentees, people that have approached me and say, Tony, would you be my mentor? And that relationship takes different phases and different shapes and sizes and the way that we do it. But I would tell you that if you can find a mentor, that's a great thing. I think that's something as early as possible. But even if you can't find a mentor, watch, be observant of other people who are in leadership roles. And obviously, not every leader is perfect, and not every leader is going to be great. But you could find yourself in a situation that even as somebody that's 3 or 4 levels above you, that you see, that you admire, see what they do. How do they act? Kind of try to see if you can follow in their footsteps in the sense of what they're doing as a leader. So even if they're not officially formally your mentor, that you have, you're observent of that.
Yeah, you could learn from anybody.
I think that you can learn from anybody and really pay attention, because little things and those little nuggets and things that you learn from individuals, it's amazing how much they pay off in the end. I'll tell you one example. It wasn't a mentor, but somebody that was a supervisor of mine told me something that sticks with me to this day. And he said to me, I went to him and I said, and this is very early in my career, probably the second job, that I had in higher education. And the person at the time has a pretty high level position and asked me, there was an issue that was going on at the university. And I said, and I brought to him the situation. I said, look, there's this problem and whatever, how do I solve it? And he looked at me and he says, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. And so, at the time I was kind of hurt about it, because you're 26 years old and somebody says that to you, you're kind of like,
what do you mean?
Like, come on, I came to you, I'm coming for you for your guidance.
Right.
But I think the great thing about that, to learn in retrospect, is basically it's not that, it's like the person will help you, but you got to bring them, think through the issue more than just saying, oh, there's a problem, there's a fire, problem,
always
resolve
fires.
it.
There's always fires.
There's always fires. It's like, okay, there's the fire. How do you put that out, right? What are the 2 or 3 ways that you think that it can happen? And then that person can help you then go through those options and see which one's the most viable option and which one they can help you with. Because sometimes you need resources, right? You need extra resources or something. to do it, and they could probably help you with the resources, but they need to they're busy too. They're very busy, and so they're not going to necessarily know as well as you know maybe the issue, and maybe the possible solutions. But you got to be able to bring those solutions to the table, so then that person can give you that guidance. So that's one thing that I mean, obviously, that I would tell somebody, a younger, somebody that's up and coming leader, is as you go through, and even if you're not going to somebody, but somebody comes to you with an issue, try to think through the possible solutions before you go to the next level and say fire, because we have a lot of fires, in leadership. There's always something that's going on that needs to be resolved. And so I think that that's something that we should always think about. And I think it's something good. But I believe that, like I mentioned before, find a mentor if you can. If not, really observe. And then
be solution oriented.
And then be solution oriented instead of being just identifying a problem.
Yeah.
Right? We can all identify problems. Easily, right? Every day we can come up with a million problems that are out there, but try to think through what those solutions. And then sometimes you may not be able to actually execute on those solutions, but you can find somebody that can.
Yeah. Great perspective and very actionable. So great nugget.
Let's do it.
On the other side, right? How large is your team?
My direct reports, I have 6 direct reports.
Okay. So how do you keep a team motivated from the perspective of a leader?
I think a lot of it has to do with the individual relationships that I build with those people.
Okay.
So we meet as a team, right? But I think that it's more about the day in, day out of my interaction with you, Alex. As if you were part of my team, listening to you, listening to your concerns, listening to your ideas, thinking about what could do in the future. You may have great ideas of something in your area that may have a great impact. And then on the flip side, me sharing with you my ideas. I think it's about having that open lines of communication. But the number one thing, I think in leadership overall, whether it's your team or it's the broader group, is listening. Active listening is the most important piece. And sometimes as leaders, because look, I've been in higher education for over 30 years, so I think, not that I think I know it all, but I probably think I know I have a lot more experience than most.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that I can't listen, right? Because there are times that I don't have all the solutions. I definitely don't have the solutions. So I have to always be an active listener, not just for solutions, but also to hear what the problems are. Yeah. Because sometimes that's what you have to do, is listen to what people are saying and not try to, a lot of times we feel like we have an answer already. Before the person even finishes saying what the issue is, right? I think listening is a very important piece. And that's something that not only do I use with my team, but with the broader campus community, with the faculty and staff on campus. I'll get emails from individuals, with suggestions to do certain things, or I see somebody in the hallway, and it's important to be able to listen to what they're saying. And then also, by you listening and people know you're listening, you validate them.
Of course.
They feel that they're valued.
They're seen.
Seen, heard, valued.
As a matter of fact, I actually think I put out a post about a couple of weeks ago saying exactly something very similar to this. I read a book recently, or I finished the book recently, called Irrational Hospitality. I don't know if you heard about it.
No, I haven't heard about it, no.
Highly recommend.
Okay.
And they're going through this moment. It's in the hospitality industry, and they're going through this moment where they're expecting something great to happen, and it doesn't actually happen. So not only the leadership is disappointed, but the whole team is like down because they worked so hard to accomplish this goal, and they didn't do it. And then the biggest lesson that I took away from that moment and the way that leader reacted as I read it is that leaders are not only there to motivate and empower their team, but also to be there in those moments where they just simply have to be humans with them.
Right. And that is the point. In that case, the person's, let's say that there was a goal, they failed, or they didn't reach their goal. I think that humanity also comes through. People have issues that come up in their lives, right? People struggle. Maybe they have a family issue, a health issue, something else that's happening in their lives. You have to be willing to be part of that. And I don't necessarily have to be best friends with, to do that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I
of
think,
course.
I think that as a leader, you have to be compassionate and a person that's empathetic enough to listen to those and then react in a humane way of how, to get that person over that hump that they're going through at that time. And you can't just ignore it, right? Because some people will say, well, it's not my problem. Like that's your problem or whatever. No, we're all humans and we have to act in a way that is humane. And everybody works so hard to get things done on a daily basis. And so it's critical that we show that humanity. And that's why it's not just about whether you hit the goal or not, right? That's part of it. That's obviously part of what we're trying to do is there's a lot of sets of goals that we're trying to reach, but it's also about the personal things in people's lives.
Man, I as a leader myself, I could tell you the more I invest into getting to know the people that, I have the privilege to work with, the more productive they become.
Yes.
The better the relationship I have with them, the more productive they become.
Yep. Because they see that you value them not just as an employee.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Or a co-worker or whatever. You know what I'm saying? That it's more than that. It's now you're at a human level and you care about them. And you could look back, I could look back at my own career and how I've had different supervisors and that's been at different levels.
Yeah.
Right? I had one supervisor that I thought one of the most touching things that ever happened is the person was no longer my supervisor. When I was getting my doctorate and at my graduation ceremony, the person flew in from another state.
Wow.
To come to my graduation ceremony.
That's incredible.
And that's incredible. Yeah. And that was very touching. And to this day, I appreciate her so much for making that effort because I was like, wow. I mean, it's like we're both adults and, I was already, like one thing is like some young person, 22 years old and, your aunt or uncle flies in or whatever. Okay, that's great. But this is a person that was my supervisor. I had left that institution, but she said, when you graduate, I'm going to be there. And she was there.
Wow.
And she came from another state, and because I graduated here, it was at FIU, my doctorate, and she came in from Maryland and flew in for the day and was there to support me. And so that means the world to me. And that's that humanity I was talking about. Yeah. That kind of thing where you show the human side. Obviously in our relationship, we continue to talk and, and all that kind of stuff, but that meant a whole lot.
Shout out to you, great leader.
Yeah. Dr. Anderson.
Anthony, you've spoken a lot about relationships today. Tell me about the impact of relationships. How could that help you become a better professional, a community leader? What could that do for somebody out there that maybe is not investing the time today to create solid relationships?
I think it's the key to everything, or at least the foundation. Right?
I agree.
It's the foundation. So whether it be the relationships that you build with your coworkers or the people out there in the community, right? And I think that for me in this position, more than any other position that I had before, because I was also the president of Hialeah campus before this. So in both positions, as campus president, I was also put in a position that I didn't have to, but I thought it was critical for me to do more with the community.
Yeah.
Right. And to do more community outreach. Other positions I had as vice president, vice chancellor, more internal facing, more campus facing kind of positions.
Right.
In those positions, in the positions I've had the last 5 years, it's really about how do I not only work within the walls and within the campus, but also outside. How do I make those connections, valuable connections? And those valuable connections that I've made through those relationships have led to collaborations that have had tremendous impact on our students here.
Of course.
Our career closet that we have here, where our students can get, clothing for free in order to go to their job interview or internship interview.
Amazing.
That happened. Not the idea, but the funding for it has all happened through the connections. We have a food pantry that one of our mutual friends donated for refrigeration for that food pantry. We didn't have refrigeration. That happened through the relationship that I built in with those individuals and two individuals in the community. The internships that we've created here on this campus, we have a micro internship program that's thriving based on the relationships that I built through Chamber South, the South Florida Hispanic Chamber, through other chambers. That has had also a tremendous impact. So it's all about the relationships, and then those relationships then turn into collaborations. Collaborations then turn into success. But sometimes we think, now I do this in my position. I wish that if I could turn back the clock, right? Again, we can turn back the clock a few years, not a whole lot of years, but let's say 10 years, maybe 15 years. But for me, that's not a whole lot, but for others, it's a lot. I think that I wish that I would have been more active in the communities that where I worked before. I just didn't think that was part of my position because nobody told me it was. But even in the current position, nobody ever told me that it was. But I have to say that I met somebody, and when I was in Hialeah, that really exposed me a lot to the first person that exposed me to the Hialeah Chamber and the Miami Lakes Chamber, and that kind of triggered something in myself. Changed my perspective. It was like, this is useful. This is necessary. I got to do this. Yeah. So Judy Britt out there, she works for Hialeah campus.
Gives you latitude. Shout out to you also.
Judy. Was the first person when I was at the Hialeah campus. Her position was to do that type of connection with the community, introduced me to individuals at both of those chambers, and that kind of just said to myself, I'm going to take this to a whole other level, because the relationships that you build by going to these events and seeing people over and over again, they become friends.
Yeah, they do.
Right? They become friends, and then those friendships turn into great business opportunities. Yeah. As you know, that's how it works, right? And so it's really helped me kind of say, hey, I could do more. And then these relationships have basically created so many great opportunities for our students here. And ultimately, that's what I'm here for, right? Yeah. Is to create better opportunities for our students. And all these relationships, in one way or another, not all of them, but some of them have turned into collaborations that have benefited our students. And now they're helping our students succeed, whether it be getting the clothing that they need for that job interview, or if they have food insecurity, getting the food that they need, or getting that first taste of what it is to work in the workforce through the micro internship. Those are just some examples of how these connections and these relationships that you're talking about have benefited not only myself, because obviously as a person, I've enjoyed having these connections and building these relationships, but also how it's impacted our campus, how it's impacted our students.
Yeah, relationships are valuable because value could be created through relationships.
That's correct, 100%.
Amazing. 100%. Tell me about the trendsetter.
Oh well, the trendsetter. So,
what does that mean, by the way, for those people?
I don't know what it really means, but I think. Okay, so several years ago, one of our mutual friends,
Ellie De La Rosa, by the way, shout out to you, my friend. I'll put your social media on this video.
So Ellie, was seeing the things that I was doing on campus. Like some of the things I just mentioned, and
setting trends,
and just setting trends, right? Doing things that maybe others in higher education were not doing.
Right.
And she identified that, and she said, "You're the trendsetter." So then I started using that moniker in my my LinkedIn posts, my Instagram posts, and she saw something that probably others saw, but Ellie said, "That's who you are." And because Ellie is such an important piece of the community and was doing so much in the community, I said, "You're the connector."
True.
Right? Because she is great at connecting people. And I mean, she's a great banker, but on top of being a great banker, she is a person in the community that's so active. Yeah. And everybody knows Ellie. And, and that I said, "Ellie, you're the connector."
She's connected me to a lot of people. So I know for a fact.
So she's hashtag the connector. Yeah. I'm hashtag the trendsetter. And so it's important, I think, sometimes for us to lift each other up, right? In that way. Course. And that's something, you could say something small, but it's been so big, so big in my own mindset, right? Because it also creates your own, it's like, hey, I'm the trendsetter, right? And it's like, maybe 10 more people believe that out there, but at least it gives you the power to say, yeah, I'm the trendsetter, and that gives you the motivation to continue to set those trends. And sometimes setting the trends doesn't mean that I'm creating these things out of thin air or just my ideas. They could also be taking ideas from others in other places throughout the country. Yeah. One thing that I do every year during the summer is that I'll go out and congratulate students who are being admitted to the college, and I'll go to their homes.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll go to their homes, and I'll visit about 30 students in the summer, and bring them some swag and a
That's
bag.
incredible.
And go out there. You meet with their parents. I congratulate them. I got that idea. So that's something, you could say I set the trend here in South Florida, but I saw it was a college president in New York that was doing that. I saw that on, I think it was on LinkedIn or something. And I said, you know what? That's something I can do here. And I did that in the middle of the pandemic, wearing masks.
Oh, wow.
Students, we would meet outside their homes or their apartment or their house, and with a mask, everybody masked up, and we did that. And I've continued to do that every year. And now people invite me inside their homes and have conversations. And really, it's about getting students motivated and inspired about starting their college journey with us here. And again, I can only do it with so many students, right? But I try to do about 30.
That's still a lot.
30 in the summer and visit them at their homes. Some of them, the parents are ecstatic, and they actually take out like pastelitos and stuff, and they'll we're being celebrated, as we're there.
Of course.
Others, they'll just be the student, but that's fine either way. And it's something that makes me feel good because we're being welcoming, as a campus, and then obviously the student, feels special.
That's
a very special
incredible
thing.
opportunity.
And we actually go out, and so my secretary will be the one calling students. We actually make the invitation out to probably more than 100 students. But many students are, I think, very intimidated by the fact that I'm going to go to their house.
Would be, right?
So they're like, no, they're like, what do you mean? What is it you want to do? It's like, no, it's okay. It's okay. I don't need that, So we'll make the invitation to about 100. We'll get about 30 that say yes. But it's very special.
Yeah.
And I think the students get a lot of it, and the parents also get a lot out of it as well.
That's incredible, by the way.
So it's not something that I created. It's not my initiative. But it's something that I've done here that nobody else does.
Yeah, but it's so true also to the advice you provided before to the young folks listening to the podcast. Find whoever's doing it the best and maybe not reinvent the wheel, just emulate. What somebody's doing.
Correct.
That works.
That works.
So thank you. Yeah, that's great.
Sure.
So tell me about social media, how that has played an aspect into your career development and building your brand.
Yeah, I think that's been the biggest part of building the brand, right, is using social media. And actually, so I've been on LinkedIn, I think, for 12 years.
Wow.
So more than a lot of people.
Yeah.
Even knew what LinkedIn was. But I wasn't very active on LinkedIn. So it was more like an observer, kind of thing.
Yeah, very passive.
Very passive. Then comes the pandemic. And the pandemic changed everything for everyone, but it also changed everything for me when it comes to the social media aspect, because I needed a means of communicating with people, a better means of communicating when everybody was in their homes. And,
right.
Even on this campus when we were closed from March all the way through, September, how do you reach faculty? How do you reach staff? How do you reach students, in a more effective way? And I started making videos, and then, well, what do you do with the videos, right? You got to post them, right? And it's not going to just be an email. It's like, how do I, do I put it on Instagram, put it on Facebook? Do I do it on LinkedIn? And that's where it started. So it didn't start as a thought of building brand. It was more about how do I better communicate in a situation where the communication is non-existent or is very difficult, right?
And all eyes were online anyways.
Correct, because that's the only place people could go, right? So that's where I started really building up my engagement, I guess, through LinkedIn. Then I started, noticing, obviously, Instagram was probably the number one way to reach our student base, and started building that up. And I've ramped up a lot in the last couple of years. And I believe that the number one thing that I've used social media for is to show the great things that are happening at this college.
You do a great job at that, by the way.
Thank you.
Great job.
And so and I really believe this, and I know it sounds cliche-ish or whatever now, but if you don't show it, people don't know what's happening.
Correct.
And today, the way that media is and social media is, I think more than ever, maybe 20 years ago that wasn't the case, right? But now more than ever, people need to see what you're doing.
Yeah.
People need to see what your campus is doing, what your organization is doing, and what you're all about. And what I've done is try to, it's not Tony, the campus president, Tony, the person. It's kind of, how do you mesh these two things together and combine them into who is Tony, right? And that's who I am, and that's my brand, is who I am. It's not about just because I'm a leader, right? It's more, I'm about Tony, the leader, and the father,
the person.
and the husband, right? And then the person, rather than these titles that
Right.
that we hold. And I try to show that through the posts that I do, which is a good mix, mostly professional,
Of course,
but
yeah.
some personal things that I think are important to share. And I've gotten some criticism from individuals online. When I've posted some things, personal things like this doesn't belong like on LinkedIn.
They don't
this
know
doesn't
what
belong
they're
on
talking about.
LinkedIn. It's like, come on, what am I?
Yeah.
I'm sharing something that's important to me,
Right.
and means a lot to me. If it's something about my mother or whatever the case may be, it's like that's who I am.
Yeah.
That's who I am as a professional too, right? As part of me is like I'm a son, right?
Yeah.
And that's who I am, and that's what makes me the person that I am. So they don't know.
They don't
and
know.
then other people have told me you post too much.
They don't know
We
either.
don't know either. so sometimes you don't listen to, there's noise, right?
Yeah.
There's always some noise out there. I'm not saying don't listen to anybody, but sometimes you just have to drown out some of the noise because some people don't know what they're talking about, especially those that are telling you that are probably ones that never post ever.
Yeah.
So they see you posting a lot. If I post 3 or 4 times a day, they're like, you're posting too much. Not true.
Yeah, I was told recently that there's such a thing called overexposure. I'm
okay.
like, no, there isn't. No, there isn't.
And you don't. And we know this because in other industries that have been doing this for centuries, or well, not maybe centuries because of the technology, but at least last 100 years, like entertainment industry and all that, we know that there is no overexposure.
No,
right?
not at
Because
all.
the more people see you, the more they can relate to you, the more they learn about you,
The more they trust you.
They trust you, the more they engage with you, right? So it's like, this is not true.
Yeah,
it's like,
not at all.
And it didn't work necessarily like in banking and in higher ed and whatever years ago. Maybe that wasn't the case, right?
Right.
Because that's fine. But
The world's different
The world's
now.
different. And I think the pandemic obviously changed us, not just the things that we went through in the pandemic, but the result of the pandemic and the more reliance on social media and on and that type of digital communication has changed us all,
Yeah.
right? And has changed the way that we have to communicate. So whether it's relating our personal brand or relating our professional or organizational brand, that has to be part of it. It's like, and those individuals out there, I'm telling you, if you're not on social media, you need to be on social media. That's the only way to connect. And whether you're in, whatever industry you're in, whether you're trying to sell something or you're trying to provide a service or whatever the case may be, people need to know who you are.
Yeah.
People need to know what you're doing. People need to know what you've done. And it's extremely important. And
for
so
sure.
I can't say that has been a huge turning point in my career, has been the use of social media and to be as active as I am. And I've gotten, I think, a lot of great positive feedback from individuals that have then said to myself, oh, I'm not listening to that 1% that's saying that I'm doing too much, right?
Yeah.
I'm listening to the 99% that's telling me, hey, Tony, you're on the right track.
I think you're doing a great
I
job.
love seeing your stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so if majority of people love seeing my stuff, maybe it's 99%, but whatever. If the majority of people love seeing my stuff, I'm going to put it out there.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's helping everybody. And at the end of the day, it's even helping our students. Because I have a firm belief that by building the brand, my own brand, and by building the brand of the college and this campus, it increases enrollment.
Oh, for sure.
It increases opportunities.
1,000,000%.
Opportunities for students. It actually bolsters the reputation of the institution and of the individuals that work here. So, of all the things that I've done in the last several years, I think that has been the most impactful because I think that, and again, I'm not alone in that. But in higher ed, I do it more probably than most, and people see that. And like I said, not everybody's going to like it, and not everybody's going to be a fan, but that's okay.
Yeah, let the results speak for themselves.
The results
That's
are
what
there.
matters.
The results are there. Yep.
Awesome, man. That's a great, interesting perspective. To close out,
Yep.
what is the biggest piece of advice you could give to young individuals or even seasoned professionals about any topic that you want?
I think one of the most important things is risk taking. I believe that you need to be able to take risks in your career, and sometimes that means, like I've done this. One risk that you could take in your life, right, is moving around, moving from city to city, from state to state, and looking for the right opportunities. And sometimes seeking those opportunities is taking a risk, right? It's putting yourselves in a uncomfortable situation.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? But with that discomfort comes an opportunity to grow as an individual. And I think that's one thing that I want people to take, from it, is that I've done this, and I'll probably continue to do it in my career, because I believe that I can be the biggest impact wherever I think that impact may be. But sometimes it's going to take me out of my comfort zone. Right. I'm going to have to do it. I'm going to have to do something but I have to go maybe somewhere or try something new that is totally foreign to me. But I believe that out of that, I'm going to learn something new. I'll learn a whole lot of things, and I'm going to grow as an individual. And sometimes that opportunity comes. But the number one thing in your head has to be taking the risk. You have to be willing to take risks.
Willing to be open to do that. And I mean, that's really hard for people to do, by the way.
It's very hard. Most people, because with risk comes change.
Yeah.
And most people don't like change.
Right.
But risk, and I'm not talking about gambling.
No, yeah.
The risk I'm talking about is calculated risk and saying, I'm going to do this. It's going to take me out of my comfort zone, and maybe my family out of their comfort zone. But I'm going to do it because I feel like I'm looking ahead, and I feel that this will be the best opportunity for me and my family to do the best we can for the future. And sometimes you're right. People feel like, and then you get stuck. And then you don't take those risks. You don't take those opportunities. You get stuck in your career. You get stuck in where you are. Then you start. I don't know if that's healthy, because now you start feeling like, what am I doing enough?
Yeah.
Am I not doing enough? But you have to. That mindset has to change. That risk mindset has to change.
So what are some of the tools you use to overcome the fear of change? Because clearly you've done it quite a lot. So what are the...
I think you just have to do it.
You just do it as a
do
decision?
It, and then I think that the more you accustom yourself to taking the risk and going through that change, the easier the changes become.
Okay.
I don't think there's a tool like, you could read books about it. You can talk to people about it. You can do a lot of things that may help you with taking that risk, but it's about taking that first step, and I think the next time you do it, the easier it'll become. I'm not saying it becomes easy, but it becomes easier as time goes on. And I think that you have to train almost like your brain to feel that that is something normal and not something that's
not like you're gonna die.
Negative, something with very negative connotations. And like I said, calculated risk, right? I mean, you want to make sure that you're taking the risk based on, again, having that plan for that journey, right? And part of any kind of, and having those goals. So if you have goals and you have plans, whatever risk you take is calculated.
Yeah.
And it's going to probably most likely pay off for you. And if it doesn't, you learn from it. That's the other thing. You have to know that with that may come failure. But failure is not an end, right? It's a learning opportunity that then you take on to the next thing. And every time, like I spent those 3 years as a financial advisor. Was I the best financial advisor ever? I don't know. I was okay, right? but I learned from that, and I took the skills from that and the experiences and applied it for the rest of my career. So I took something that was maybe a blip on the screen. Now it's only 10% of my 30 plus years working in a professional capacity, but it doesn't mean it didn't count. It was very important to do that and to take that. And that was the biggest risk that I ever took, because what I had to do was, and I'll tell you real quickly. So when I left my job, which was a nice job at FIU, I was an assistant dean of students at FIU, left that job, started this training program to become a financial advisor. And they gave us 3 months. After 3 months, we had to take all the tests. The first one we took was the Series 7, which is stockbroker's license, right? And basically, if I didn't pass that,
you'll be out of a job.
I'll be fired.
Wow.
And I was already out of FIU, and I would have been fired. I had at that time my son, and my wife was pregnant.
Wow.
And still took the risk. And they'll tell you that the day that I went to take the test, and it was in a computer lab, and you press a button at the end, and it tells you your score, and I had to get a 70% or higher. The 2 seconds, I don't know how long it took for the score to appear. To me, it seemed like longer than 2 seconds. Those 2 seconds, or 1 second, whatever it was the longest 2 seconds of my entire life. Because I said, if I don't pass this, I'm out of a job.
Yeah, the whole livelihood of my family.
What happens? What happens to my family?
Wow.
But I had to take the risk because I felt that was the best thing for my family at the time, for me and my family. So when I pressed it, I got an 80. Yeah. and felt great. And it was like I went from the most pressure ever
To the most relief.
relief and really excitement,
Yeah.
because it was something that, I had achieved. And so it just shows you got to take, that was the biggest risk that I had ever taken, because it was a do or die. That test was a do or die versus, other times I've moved to places and whatever, and sometimes, you're a good fit or not, okay, but you could probably, maneuver and deal with it. But that was
That was
yeah.
All right, you guys heard it here. Dr. Cruz said it. Go scream at your boss today. Take that risk. No, I'm kidding. Listen, how do we find you, my friend? How do we find you online?
Well, you can always find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram mostly. And I'm out there for anybody that wants to chat. One thing that's been the great thing about doing the things that I've been doing on social media for the last several years, I've built so many relationships with people that I've never met in person all over the country. So if you're out there, you're watching this, you want to learn more about my leadership style, or you want to learn more about higher education, or just chat about something that that you feel that's on your mind, reach out to me. I'm willing to have those conversations with anybody, as long as they're willing to listen.
Yeah.
It's great. So, and that happens every day. Every day I get somebody that'll send me a DM through LinkedIn or whatever, and say, hey, I'd like to connect, or they have a question, or on Instagram sometimes as well. Instagram probably not as much, more on LinkedIn. But it's something that I feel that I always want to give back. I want to give back because I have so much that I've been able to gain over the years. I want to be able to give back. So hopefully you'll take advantage of that and reach out to me, either through LinkedIn or through Instagram.
Awesome. Anthony, my friend, such a pleasure being here with you.
Alex.
Thank you for the conversation. I'll see you guys the next time.
All right.
Thank you. Cut. That was awesome.